there's so much music today. Like you have a lot of competition regardless of what genre you are. So like I trust artists. I'm like, you are what makes the difference. You are why I stay along. You are why I get more invested. A song can certainly do wonders of that, but like that's why there's one hit wonders is there's not someone behind it for us to stay with and grow with. And that's imperative to, establishing a long-term fan base.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Headliner Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is the very first publicist I've ever had on the show. He's worked with artists like Zedd, Subtronics, Rezz, and many others, helping them craft their unique stories and get placements with some of the biggest news outlets in the country. This is Franz Hilberath from MP3 PR.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate that nice intro. Am I auditioning you for my publicist?
Hey, well, here's the cool thing. I'm really excited to have you on because I started my music industry career in publicity. That was my very first job. My very first job in the music industry was working at Capitol Records, and I was the assistant for the head of PR. She was the head of publicity. She was the head of creative services. She also got promoted to then we handled like the video team, the marketing team. She became a bigger executive, but she was the publicist for Katy Perry. Not only that, she did help got her signed. So she had like A&R credit, but she was really a legendary publicist. Rest in peace, Angelica Cobb-Baylor, my first mentor, my first person that really opened up the door for me to get into the music industry. But she was behind so many bands like fucking System of a Down, Kid Rock, was like the PR chick that blew up all these bands back in the day. And Katy Perry was like I came in right when Katy Perry launched her first album. So that was my intro when I wanted to be a rock publicist. That was like my initial sort of intention. But then I fell in love with dance music and I totally shifted direction. So I'm excited to be talking to a publicist. You're the first one on the show. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be the first of my kind on here. I was going to say, did Kid Rock PR scare you out of the business?
No, I mean, that was before my time. But she did tell me some stories about like waking up, like fucking hammered. And this was like back in like, the 90s and shit where it was like rock and roll lifestyle was very much alive. And she was a crazy party animal for a long time. But yeah, man. Well, so this is where I would love to start the conversation. Tell me first off about yourself and what you're doing at your company.
Sure. So, I usually, obviously, publicist is my big flashy title. I always start with, I'm a writer and a storyteller. I started really my writing career about 6 years old, writing my first novel of 30 pages that I would pass around at like the family gatherings or family reunions. And that has always been like my gift is writing, is being able to convey or capture ideas and turn them into something tangible for people to learn from. So I went to college, Florida State, where as an English major nerd, I got out of college and immediately started the journalism route. I probably was writing for national blogs and newspapers for around 5 years, interviewing a lot of dance acts. And I always really loved talking with artists one-on-one and capturing their story and getting an artist excited about an article, which has been becoming an increasingly fleeting thing, was like where I really started hitting off. And eventually it dawned on me, I was getting all these emails from publicists and I'm like, I could do this. And it's not way better. I'm getting so many of these copy and paste emails and I'm not a copy and paste type of guy. So I started slowly moving over to the PR world, working with different independent labels like Wakan and Dirty Bird. I was doing things for like $20 a pop. I just wanted to write the liner and the Apple Music little info thing. And been very fortunate over the last 10 years. It's evolved to, I run MP3 PR today. We represent a handful of not just underground acts, but, some national brands. We're doing PR with AEG and Red Rocks out here. Zedd's one of our bigger clients, Shaquille O'Neal's Diesel Project. And then a handful of like underground labels, which is still really my bread and butter. So, we do Zedd's Dead Beats, The Trees Memory Palace, and a bunch of different labels throughout the United States. And again, it's always really stuck with that same core energy of taking underground stories that are a little less tangible and far away from people and bringing them to light and getting, kids to be interested in actually learning more about, about the inspiration of music or the inspiration behind their favorite artists.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I'm excited to really dig into this because I think that a lot of people don't really know what a publicist does. Like, what is their role? Why do they exist? What is sort of also the traditional role? Like, I got into the industry in 2008. I was at Capitol Records 2008 to 2011. A lot has changed since then. The role of a publicist has changed. I mean, this is what we would call PR, right? When people hear the word PR, I think a lot of people actually don't even know what that means. Public relations, right? Your relationship with the public, the artist or the client's relationship with the public. And the publicist is kind of the middleman between that, right? Managing your public image in a way. You have sort of a high end, like a celebrity publicist where they're almost doing like damage control, a lot of times. Like I remember where it was like Katy Perry and Russell Brand were like getting divorced or something. And so the publicists were on the phone like, hey, how do we want to spin this story? Like, what's the story we want the news outlets to tell? And that's a very, very high level of it. But I like what you talked about with storytelling, which is so important and oftentimes I just think so overlooked because I remember and I'm just going to use Katy Perry as a thread for this whole fucking convo because that was where I saw it. But when we signed Katy Perry, they had to figure out like, what's her story, right? Like what makes her interesting? Obviously there's the music. We've got these great hits. And the radio team is pitching that to the radio, which today would be more like, you're pitching your tracks to Spotify and getting stuff there. But our job was to figure out like what's interesting about this artist. And the story was that she was grew up this Christian good girl and grew up on gospel music. And she was the daughter of a preacher. And then she kissed a girl and she liked it and turned into this like Hollywood pop star. So that was the story that we created behind the artist. It was true, but it was a very intentionally crafted narrative.
Absolutely.
So I'd love for you to speak into that side of I like that you're talking about this storytelling side. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you actually apply that to what you're doing and your clients?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think you hit on a good thing there. Some people have no idea what a publicist does or PR. Half people think it stands for press release. And a lot of people, even if they do have an idea, have this dramatized approach where, are understanding that we're controlling narrative or this or that. Well, a lot of people in my field are, like I said, storytellers, writers that come from, typically journalism backgrounds or somewhere in the media and understand the value of true storytelling. And like you're just saying with Katie, is if she just kissed the girl and she was on radio, it'd just be another controversial pop star. But the fact she's, there's this backstory of her being, raised in this religious household and breaking through the norms. There's so many people that can relate to that as they're coming of age and finding themselves and maybe shaking things up in their life. So just exactly that, really PR, at least from our company at MP3 PR, breaks down to three kind of pillars. Is the first one you talked about is brand strategy. So when we first sign a client or work with someone, we get in on the ground floor and really challenge them. Is like, what is the story here? Or like, one of the common practices I do is tell me what's inspiring about, really important about this project or inspires you. And then I hand them my phone and say, go find that online for someone else to find. And then usually like, well, it's on online. I'm like, cool. Why don't we get that narrative out there? A true meaningful narrative that we all, center on, that's going to create impact and further meaning with your brand and your fans, and then put that out there. So once you've organized around a brand strategy, it's about brand awareness, looking at the different places that your audience lives. So, if you're an underground act, like, are you a SoundCloud versus Spotify guy? Where are the YouTube channels that are congregating? Who are the influencers that are creating content or talking about this type of music? What are the social channels that are promoting this right now? Because that's the most relevant place to push music for these underground acts right now. And then from there, if they're bigger acts like, Shaq, the Bobby Eltoff podcast, or, Zedd's Dead, they're having their biggest tour yet and getting to find the right industry magazine to cement their long history of touring. And again, finding out where that audience is for that story. And then from there, the last pillar is brand relations. And, that happens to be my decade of experience as a publicist and writer. I know, writers, editors, publishers, publicists around the country, know how they operate, understanding the timelines. So many artists are hitting me up 48 hours before the release, like, well, we loved what you did on this. We'd love to do PR. And I'm like, well, you're not understanding that building a story and getting it out there, and then also working with tastemakers that are going to take the time to convey that story in their platforms and their mediums. They need time. If you're trying to be on the cover of a magazine, that's not something that's flipped around in a week. That's a 3 to 5 month process. And that's really what we're doing. Again, it's helping artists understand their story, understand where that story can live, and then working with those tastemakers around the world to help make sure that story comes to life.
Totally. And it'll be really interesting to explore a bit of the evolution. I'm going to bring it back to 2008, 2011, working at Capitol Records, where we were taking CDs and stuffing them in the envelope with all of these printed out articles about the previous press articles that had been written about that artist and mailing them to magazines. Like, that was the goal. The biggest thing was getting on the cover of Rolling Stone. People were still reading magazines. I mean, they were even pitching newspapers. Newspapers had fucking music sections. The biggest golden ticket level of publicity that you really could get would be TV, getting on to be a guest on Jimmy Kimmel, to be a guest on Jimmy Fallon, like any of these big shows, or like, the Super Bowl, the Grammys, that's technically PR as well. Like, they're not getting hired. Those aren't like paid gigs. That's just publicity. Getting free publicity by playing the Super Bowl is really the number one biggest thing you can get. Now, things have changed. You're not stuffing CDs and envelopes anymore. Obviously, like, that's changed technically, but also, like you said, where is the audience living? Even blogs, I feel like, blogs have, to a certain extent, become less relevant. They're just not getting the same viewership. Like, so many magazines have gone out of business. So I would love to hear what you think are the best places to really be getting placed, to be getting your story told. And then also just want to quickly like reemphasize that point that, when you are trying to get, let's say it was a magazine or it was a blog, just the fact that you have a new track coming out doesn't really matter. That's not interesting. This is the whole point of having the stories. It's like, who is the artist? What's their story? Why are they interesting? Why are they different? Like, this is why you got a lot of people are just like, hey, I got a new track. Here's my SoundCloud link. Like, who fucking cares? Everybody has a track and a SoundCloud link. Like, what's actually interesting about you, right? So that's the importance of the storytelling. But I'm very curious about these days, what are the main places that you're really trying to pitch and get these placements with?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of like the same thing I was saying is no copy paste emails. There's no copy and paste campaigns. Like, every story should be unique. And there's different ways. Now, to take it, like you said, back in 2008, you're stuffing envelopes. That was around the time I started writing and was writing in a newspaper. So, like, I can remember getting Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys sending me a CD because I had covered their show 3 years prior. And, like, that was an exciting time in PR because I feel like you're far more narrow. You're shooting, you're right, for like the Super Bowl, these bigger placements. But outside of that, you have the traditional routes: radio, TV, newspaper, magazine, and the blogs. And you're right. Today, written media is not necessarily where it's at, or where it was. Like some of these blogs used to be some of the bigger outlets in the country, and a lot of blogs are falling off today, but there's still narrative there, and they still have their niche followings for those regions. So how we look at it now, like modern PR, is it's not just the editorial, and really editorial I break down to like your niche, your region, and like, region or local is like, those local like newspapers are some of the most valuable placements you can get even today. Is like where a lot of blogs or national magazines might have fallen up. Local newspapers still have, distributions from 100 to 200,000 people that depend on the news to understand their community. So if you can get a placement in a community newspaper or magazine or TV station, and now that entire community is aware of your brand, it definitely helps. And of course that like helps your SEO because there's some of the larger sites. So that was a bit of a tangent, but
do you think that, let's say we're talking about dance music artists specifically, do you think any dance music fans are actually reading the editorial and or newspapers specifically? Like, is it worth?
So again, that's like they're serving different things here. So like if we were just pitching blog, let's say we fail on our job and making sure the story gets out there. some of the, the blogs, they still have decent traffic. I'm able to see the back end of what traffic is. And like, they're still, hanging around. There's still some like valuable blogs in the United States that still have good traffic. And again, regionally, if they're playing a show in that area or their fan base is there and you put their name in that market's blog, it's going to get some exposure. Now, again, with the local stuff, do dance fans read the local newspaper? Now, I was that nerdy kid in high school that walked around the newspaper. There's not a lot of me out there. But it's like I was saying before, is when someone finally takes the time to look up your name or your project or your brand, what are they going to find? A bunch of links to your socials. And then what? Is there something substantial that I can click on that link and now I understand that project or that backstory or get that Katy Perry backstory? And again, it's different with dance fans. That's where I come from, and sort of the cornerstone of like my passion is getting that story out there. So 10 years from now, when someone looks this up, the first page of Google is going to be stocked with articles that really convey that story well. But you're 100% right. It's not just the blogs. Like, again, that is that's the first block that we do as traditional publicists. But then there's playlisting, there's YouTube, there's socials, there's in-person activations. There's a lot of different things to look at. It's not just blogs and written media, but somewhere we got to have the story published. And I just don't see that done well enough on socials where I can look at your feed and understand the story immediately like I could an article.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So getting the press, getting the, let's say, the long story written about you or the interview with the blog where they're telling your story, it's not necessarily that that's going to get you a ton of exposure, but it's that when I become a fan and I'm like, I want to learn more about this person and I search for them, what can I find? And that makes total sense because I recently did that myself where I was having Lizzie Jane on the podcast and I was like, oh, I want to know a little bit more about her. Like I can look at her Instagram and that tells a little bit of a story, which if you're really good at branding, you can be telling a good story there as well. But also I was like, oh, let me go find this interview that this blog did with her. And now I can read about that. I know a lot more about her. I can ask better questions. So that's a really, really good point. Like, where's your story actually living and the value of having that actual kind of written content out there?
Yeah. Well, you hit on it at the end is, a lot of times I'll set up an interview for an artist and they're like, I'll get the advanced points. And they're like, why are we talking about things other than the single? I'm like, well, if it was just a single, it's kind of like, again, I'll keep going back to your Katy Perry thing. If it was just I Kissed a Girl on a streaming thing and there's no backstory or anything about the artists themselves, I'm going to move on to the next I Kissed a Girl song, because there's so much music today. Like, you have a lot of competition regardless of what genre you are. So like I trust artists. I'm like, you are what makes the difference. You are why I stay along. You are why I get more invested. A song can certainly do wonders of that, but like that's why there's one hit wonders is there's not someone behind it for us to stay with and grow with. And that's like imperative to, establishing a long-term fan base. I think, that's going to, be brand ambassadors. And again, goes to, you can tell me about your brand when I'm in the room with you. When you're not in the room, someone's talking about your project. Are you confident that they are explaining it right or know anything about you? And if you haven't put anything out there towards press, probably failing on that. But, some people, like you said, are very good at social media. Like you can do that even just with your logo sometimes and like, complementing the branding and with graphics on your socials, but it's very hard. And that's why we do everything. We're going to help you get the social stuff that help further your brand and narrative and reach. We're going to help you track it more reach, and we're going to help your story have more value in the long term.
I've been having this conversation so often with clients and often here on the podcast as well. I love this idea and this saying that the music is the soundtrack to the movie. People aren't following you just because of the music. The music is part of it. The music introduces them to their world, but it is just the soundtrack. Why are people following you? The truth is there's so much music out there. And if there's a lineup of 10 artists that are all making, relatively great music, kind of similar, why am I going to choose that one artist, right? It's because of the story. It's because of the brand. It's because of what you stand for, what you're about, right? There's 100%. Something there. So I really love that you bring up that point of like, what is going to inspire someone to actually really follow your journey and really become a fan versus just like a casual listener that's like, oh yeah, that was a cool track and maybe I listened to it a few times or it's on a playlist or something. But we're talking about actually building a fan base here. So you got to give them a reason to be a fan, which fortunately or unfortunately, it is about more than just the music.
I love that analogy. I will 100% be stealing that, Nick. Is like, again, yeah, you don't have the movie or the world in which the soundtrack lives in. How can it have, the carryover impact that makes, the iconic or something that someone's going to listen to 10 to 20 times? I'm a big believer in like the hero's journey. And, I pitch Donald Miller's Building a Story brand all the time. And it's, if I can't follow your journey, I can't be invested in it. And we understand the same principles from where we see how social media is so impactful and important today is if you're just throwing content out there, I don't think it connects with people. But like if you're now they want all artists, they want to see in your life, they want to follow you around, they want to know what you're doing, they want to hear your personality. Why? Because they want to be in your world. And that's why people are going to go out and buy your merch and go see more than one show or bring their friends to a show. Like, why bring someone to something you can't like explain why it has meaning or it's just dope? Well, you're going to age out of that eventually. Like at some point in time, something has to have meaning. And I think, again, everything evolves and is very cyclical. Albums and CDs went out of whack and now those are somehow, coming back to an extent. I think with PR, when I started this about 5 or 6 years ago, I was laughed at by managers, artists, and the editors saying PR and bass music. And now some of those people are my clients. And I write, run cover stories through them. So like I think everything's very cyclical and our understanding, evolves on things and like, where we put value and impact on things changes. But at the core of it, it's connecting with human beings. And you got to have a story or something, you're at a dinner table. If you're just asking about the weather, you ain't really going to bring it home with anybody, but you're able to connect with someone and tell them your story. That's what stays with people.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's imagine that I'm a client. I'm coming on board to do a campaign with you. Let's walk through that process of what that would look like. Obviously, it depends on, who the person is, right? But let's just say sort of a general artist. And it sounds like our first step would be let's sit down and get clear about like what is the story, right? What's the story? What's interesting about you? What is it that we're really going to be pitching to people? What would our next step be then? We talked about we'd hit up some of the editorials. And by editorials, you mean that's like blogs and written type of platforms, newspapers, blogs, things like that, right?
Well, for you, it'd be, like I said, everything's very unique. So like, again, on paper, I know Nick runs a podcast. Nick likes hosting industry and artist conversation and creative conversations. All right, well, Nick, where are you based? Oh, you were a publicist first. Oh, you worked on this. Oh, where were you? Are you originally from Texas? Okay, what area is that? What do you have coming up in the next 6 to 12 months that we could potentially play off of or talk about? Our very first thing is, well, usually, do the bureaucratic stuff with management, but my very first thing is I have to meet with the artist one-on-one, do these type of things where it's an hour plus debrief of just like, what was why'd you get into music? Did you start with an instrument? That type of thing. So the same with things like, when did you start here? Start really understanding your story from a granular level. And then brand awareness. Sure, we can go find some blogs, but you just told me, Nick, that you don't think the blogs are impactful. Okay, cool. What other industry conventions or events can we line up for Nick to be a speaker at or just be in attendance and start networking at? Or, what's the local newspaper thing that would have a significant SEO impact when people are looking up your name? Or how can we shape up your EPK so when we're sending out info on you, it's a more full thing, really, listing all of your accolades. So it's really like getting under the hood and understanding everything that's in the engine and then start talking about, all right, well, here's everything you have going on. Here's your story. Now let's start figuring out all these things that could create impact for you. And again, if you're a client that comes to me, Franz, I want to do blogs. Cool. That's why I like my job. We have a million different routes to go and being creative to figure out where can we place you and where's your audience. If your audience might be artists, we go to a certain place. If it's strictly music fans, a certain place. If it's industry, we go somewhere like Polestar where there's industry people. So understanding what are your goals in telling your story, because you're now opening yourself up. So in return, I'm going to make sure you get, the impact and gain what you want out of this as well. So like I said, no copy and paste here at our team. Really try to like understand you and understand your story, and then help you understand where those stories actually live and who that audience is.
Yeah. Okay. So can you give us an example of a campaign that you've done, or maybe you're doing currently, and maybe the difference of where you're pitching them and why?
Sure. One I always like to use is Mersive's Pretty Dark Loud campaign. I moved out to Colorado in 2020. I'm really good at timing, with the sole goal of wanting to work with musicians or artists like Mersive. And within a couple months, I ended up getting connected with his team, who brought me on to do PR for his debut album. And I really got to understand Mersive's story of, he, came from Louisiana. His mother got him really started on music. His mother passed away. And through that inspiration, he really fell in love with live events and creating electronic music to help people get through similar things that he was experiencing. He ends up moving to Colorado after 5 years, drops an album, headlines Red Rocks. So from that point, there's a few different things. There's one, I want fans to know that story, because that's what made me fall in love with him as a person. I'd take a bullet for him. I jump in front of a car for that guy. I truly believe in what he's trying to do for other people, and where it's all coming from. So I want to get that out to fans. So I'm going to, using my press relations acumen, is go out and find all the impactful blogs to make sure they're not only writing about the music, understanding what Pretty Dark Loud means to his project, but also understanding the man behind it. And then from there, he's headlining his first Red Rocks. Why don't we go make sure that he gets in Polestar, so they highlight him as a hot star for his touring, endeavors over the last 3 years, and really capitalize that in front of industry. And now agents are all seeing that. And then the last piece
I just want to highlight that right there as well, of like, let's let the industry know about him. We're going to hit the fans. We're going to have a place for his story to live with the blogs. But that was a really strategic move of like, we want the music industry to know who this guy is, the agents as well. Polestar is a music industry platform, right? That's who the managers and the labels and the agents are reading. So really cool. Yeah, just to highlight that. It's a really cool move.
Absolutely. Well, now you have fans reading the backstory and falling in love with the human being behind this project. You have industry agents who are reading these magazines month to month, seeing his name and seeing all of his endeavors. And then the third piece is Mersive has Morpho Records, his own music label out here. And he's been establishing in Denver, promoting Denver artists and doing Denver curated events for a long time. He's played nearly every venue in the country. So we went out and got that print newspaper interview. We got him on Fox News to talk about throwing this big cultural event we did in town and hitting the local side. We were running a Cinco de Mayo event and trying to get it to be more family-centered thing. So like, that's different than dance fans, and understanding, all right, well, that audience on Fox, they get 1.4 million viewers daily. And if we could bring just a few more people in because they view this as like a community-based artist willing to do family-centered things, then I could bring in a few more people. And that's, at the end of the day, outside of just promotion, I'm really trying to create more fans. This all comes from creating mixtapes in high school and loving to tell those stories to make other people love those artists. And that's, in essence, what the business is getting it to the people, that are going to listen to that story, changing that story a little bit for each of them, and then, getting it to run.
I like that you mentioned how it was a part of his story with his mother passing away. And that's a very, deep emotional part of his story that you felt connected to. You felt some sort of connection to the artist, not just because of the music, but because of the story there. And I have to share, because I think this is great for us to talk about, like, how to actually pitch somebody, where we had already been in contact. I think your assistant had hit me up about pitching some artists from your roster to get on the podcast. But then he hit me up later and he was like, hey, would you be down to interview the owner of the PR agency, my boss, Franz? And he was like, this guy has been so amazing. He really gave me my shot at like grooming me and helping me get into the industry. And it was like this really heartfelt message that he sent along with that. And that's what made me automatically say yes. Automatically. I was like, fuck yeah, because of that, because I see how much this guy cares about you, like the love, the appreciation, just the one or two little lines in there that was actually coming from a real emotional place. I was like, oh, hell yeah. And I can't tell you, like, it's really cool. I'm in a position now where the podcast has grown to the point that I'm getting hit up. I get press releases, PR firms are hitting me up. Hey, will you put this artist on or that? man, I can't tell you how many copy and paste bullshit ass emails I get where I'm like, yo, you don't even know what the fuck I do. Like I had a country artist hit me, like a PR agency for a country artist. I have countless examples of just like the silliest pitches that I get where I'm like, you haven't even like customized this message or given me any reason to want to say yes. And even if they're like a dance music artist, I've passed on big fucking dance music artists because I'm like, yeah, you just copy pasted this email and that's just not going to inspire me to say yes. But the minute I got that from Connor, right? Connor is his name.
Yeah.
Right. Shout out Connor. Made this happen.
Shout out Connor.
I was like, oh fuck yeah, dude. I'm down. I got to meet this guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's what separates, the truly passionate professionals in this and just the people doing this for some tickets or side stage or don't really know what they're doing is, again, I came from the journalism background. I know a canned pitch when I see one, and I pride myself on, like, for every major release I work, I sent out a fully custom, like, me email, like, hey, it's Franz, it's Friday, this is the latest thing I'm most excited about, here's a story of why I love this artist, this is what's going on, I'd really love your thoughts on this, and like send an actual email versus like a news blast. And I've worked with different like agencies before, and I've worked with every type of writer. There are some writers that just want the canned pitch. They don't want your sentimentality. But like, again, it kind of goes back to why should artists promote their story at all? Is like, if you're just shoving a pre-save link in someone's face versus like a creative, unique, like hype up rollout campaign for an album, there's a difference there, right? And it's the same with my profession is like, are you actually wanting to connect with this person? Or are you just trying to get something?
Yeah.
In which case, like, if you have a big enough artist, you might get away with that. But I had a former mentor of mine, Alistair Duncan at Infamous PR, once taught me one of the most valuable things I've ever heard is you could send 100 pitches and get 10 responses. Or you could send 10 of the right pitches and get 10 responses. Yep. Do you want to be a 10% guy or a 100% guy? And what he meant by that is like, you could send out your canned pitch to 100 people, but you can really take your time diving into the story, finding the right writer that actually is going to be into this, and then writing the pitch that like it makes sense. And what I mean by that is, we're looking for general coverage or anything you're interested in. Well, do you know what their byline is? Like they do interviews or they do a production feature or they talk about travel deals. So why are you saying general coverage if they cover something specifically? Well, you probably didn't look into their byline. So it's like understanding of when I send an email now, this might be my philosophy days in English school, is like, I am sending it with the intention of, I know what this response is going to be. I try not to pitch people that I don't think I'm going to get a response for. I don't know what I'm doing because what's the point? It's not going to be as meaningful if this person's not really connecting with it or you're not really pitching it the right way. If I can take that time and I think on 100 pitches to really get granular with like, what is this writer actually going to connect with about this story? And rather than just pitching them a single link, that's where I think that's like where the level jump is in this business is understanding the storytelling is not just in the press release. It's how you convey it, how you connect with people, and how you follow through and getting it out there.
Yeah. I hope you guys are taking notes because you're getting a masterclass right now in how to do this. Because the truth is, if you don't have a publicist right now, you are your own publicist. If you don't have a manager right now, you are your own manager. If you don't have an agent right now, you are your own agent. And this is how every business starts. Right now, I'm a one-man show of my business, but as I grow, I'm going to hire a team. I'm going to have other people doing other things for me. I'm going to expand. I'm going to build a team. I'm going to delegate. It's the same thing as an artist. When you start off, you are the CEO, you're the sales department, you're the marketing department, and you're the fucking janitor. You're the whole thing. So learn how to do each of these roles. We're giving you some great tips here. Don't send like copy and paste bullshit to people. Right. And I can speak for that as well. If I get a text from somebody, there's such a big difference between, maybe somebody spams me something and it's very obvious. You just copy and paste it. But if like someone goes out of their way and they text me and they're like, hey, Nick, I've got this EP out or I got a show coming up. Like, I'd love to see you there. I'm 90% more likely to listen to it or to actually go to it than you put me on your mailing list that you blasted to a million people with the same shit. Right. So I love that. A quick tip and strategy as well that I used to use as a manager, because I was a manager for after PR, after Capitol Records, I got into management. I did management for probably 4 or 5 years, managing artists. So as a manager, I was also the publicist for most of my clients as well, especially coming from that background. But what I would do is I would look up, okay, let's say I want to get an interview or I want to get someone to write about my new release. Well, I would just search who is an artist that's pretty similar to me. And I would go find who interviewed that artist. Not only what's the outlet, but who's the actual human being. Yep. Who is the writer. Like, because this writer took their time to write about this release, took their time to interview this artist. So they obviously they like that style of music. And so now you know not only the outlet that you're pitching, but you know the human being. Most people are very accessible. A lot of time their email is written right there. Or I've done this. I'll follow them on Instagram. Hit them up on Instagram, but then I'll be like, hey, I saw the article that you wrote about X, Y, and Z. That was really awesome. Like, I'm such a fan of that artist too. If you like him, you might be into what I'm doing as well. Like, you're showing that you've taken the time to actually do a little bit of research and kind of build that connection. And, you know, you can like fluff them up a little bit, but not even from an insincere way, but like, hey, that was a really great article. You're a writer. I actually respect the great questions that you asked in that interview and the way that you wrote, you know? So taking that extra time, like you said, that's going to get you your 10 out of 10 rather than your 10 out of 100.
The short of it, we can just say is be genuine. You know, I think we've evolved to a point now where everyone can see things that are disingenuine. So whether it's an ad, content, song, story, email, text, everyone can read it. Like, you know, you're applying to a job and you're getting a copy paste AI written cover letter. You don't think they've read that? They want to know who you are, you know, and people want to connect with people. We don't all want to be alienated and, you know, like, I don't know, with politics and culture, like everything could be so alienated now, but like people want to connect. So like, if you can just show that you're genuine in everything that you do, that connects with people. And, you know, if you thought about your story or your business or what you're doing and getting it to the right people and actually knowing there's an audience or a customer base for that, like being genuine will get you through all these things. As long as you've done, you know, your due diligence as an artist or a business person in those things. Yeah. And you're right. It's hard for artists. Like when you start, you're your everything, you know, and you have to like figure all this out for yourselves. But, you know, I use this analogy all the time. Is the baker spends his entire life figuring out he loves cooking or loves baking and learning how to make the perfect loaf of bread. He's gotten so good at making this bread, he's able to open a shop by himself. Well, guess what? Once he's opened the bakery, what's he worrying about? The bread's last. He's got to turn on the lights, got to pay utilities, he's got to pay his staff, he's got to learn how to market, he's got to maybe do PR, he's got to do management. You have to do everything else. So it's like, yes, there's a thing, but you got to really build out the team right with people that understand these things and are genuine.
Yeah. So most of my listeners know that I can be a little bit woo-woo, and I love that, and I own that. So this is a disclaimer. Everybody buckle the fuck up because we're about to go down the rabbit hole, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've just been seeing it in every area of life, every area of the artist's journey, about ultimately just how everything is energy. Everything is energy, right? Even our entire universe, everything that appears solid is not actually solid. You know, it's like all these little atoms are moving around at millions of miles an hour. Like everything is energy. And that has to be our priority. That's why we've probably started making music in the first place, was because it was fun and there was passion and there was this energy. And I'm starting to sign bigger touring clients now that I'm seeing a common trap that people are falling into, where it's like they started off making music with a certain kind of energy behind it. It was pure, it was genuine, they loved it, they were putting their heart and soul into it, and that's why they became successful. And so they built a business around the art, but now they're running a business, and it's shifted to now I'm making art for my business. And they've lost the passion, they've lost the spark, they've lost the fucking energy of why they were successful in the first place. And I'm just seeing this trend so often. So I've been like, yo, let's get you back into that energy. Same thing with content, same way with how you're showing up. I was doom scrolling the other night, Some of you might have seen my post. It was 1 a.m. and I just posted this little rant because I just was noticing, I'm like, yo, everyone is posting the same shit, and I can see the tactical strategy. You're posting the things you're supposed to be posting, but there's no heart and soul underneath it. There's no fucking passion. There's no energy. There's no oomph underneath it. And it's like, I'm not saying ignore the strategy. There's a strategy for blowing up on social media. There's a strategy for your marketing campaign. There's a strategy for your emails that you're sending out. There's a strategy for building your business, but you got to have it coming from the right place. And so I'm just seeing the whole matrix slow down of like, this is the number one fucking thing it boils down to is like, get your energy in the right place first, and then make your art from there, build your business from there, build your relationships from there, build your strategy from there. Similarly, it's like, hey, get clear on what your fucking story is. Get clear on who you are, what you're all about. Like, do that deeper core work. And then every move you make when it comes to strategy and tactics is actually going to have some real energy behind it.
Absolutely. I think people get in a trap today of like trying to be cute or funny and like just trying to get reactions out of people rather than trying to create meaning or energy like you're talking about. And I think ultimately it's those creators or artists or, you know, movers and shakers in the world are the one with those energy that gets everybody else moving and creates it and is able to pass it off. And to bring it back to Mersive, that's one of his core principles is energy, energy, energy. Like he says it almost every set is like, I want to feel you giving me energy and I'm going to give it right back to you. And again, you can feel this through everything that you do. And, you know, people can see it when it's disingenuous. And I think, you know, what you mentioned about artists then trying to make art for the business, it's kind of going back to the baker thing is like, now you might cut corners on the loaf of bread to make sure the business is successful. And I think it comes back to why I personally feel like we have, you know, value and impact with artists is like, once we've helped establish this meaningful story and your purpose that's going to connect with other people, how could you not have energy? You know, like, I've seen you talk about like, you know, you have your gift and then there's the service from this, right? And like, I help you find the meaning in which like is going to be your service into like delivering it to other people. Like, you know, whether it's Mersive or Zedd or Shaq, like these people actually create impact in people's lives by being willing to open up their story and having such a genuine story. So I just think it's so important to really identify why you're doing this and like actually have a unique, purposeful reason behind it. Cause then that you can run behind that forever. It's when you try to be cute or whatever and something pops off and now you have a business and a team and now you're trying to create meaning around something after the fact. It's a little harder.
Exactly. So what's your why and your reason for doing what you do?
My why? Well, like I said, my gift, I've always loved writing and getting to connect with people. And I, you know, through my life, obviously became a music guy. And like, why I really fell in love with music is it's been, I think, a constant hand through my life since I was about 5 years old. That's my first memory is like, remember pointedly being in my dad's passenger seat, listening to Tim McGraw's Where the Green Grass Grows when I was 5 or 6 years old. And where it really had meaning is through high school, I used to have crippling social anxiety, whether it was like getting on the bus or going into class or going anywhere after school. Like it was really tough to me to express myself and not be overconscious of like who I was or what I'm saying or what people are thinking. And around 15, 16, when I got a license, my mom no longer had to take me to concerts. I'd start going 2-3 times a weekend because it was the one place where I could be somewhere where everyone is the same heartbeat, like-minded. We're all here for the same reason. And now I have an easy basis to talk to you and understand you and get the sense that like I'm connected to you in a sense. And like that helped me evolve from a child into a young man, being willing to put himself out there and go out and explore. And I, you know, ultimately found this festival scene, which, you know, very similar experience. So now I'm going from one stage of a whole group of people watching Robert Plant to another one, watching Future and being able to feel connected when I enter that new crowd. And that's, I think, my purpose through all this and working in music outside of the selfish thing. I love music is I've seen the good it can do. It's, you know, whether it's in my life or through my clients, fans' lives. and watching what that impact does for people and giving them purpose or making them feel safe or just making them feel happy or giving them that, kind of respite just for a little bit. So like, I just truly believe in the power of music for what it does to people. And that's my goal, is get more stories out from creatives, music and musicians and this community and festivals to help provide other people like an entry point to experience the same thing I did.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. And so true, just we're talking about energy here. It's like, that's what music is. Music isn't even something you can hold really that's tangible. It's this invisible thing that hits our ears and our brain and our soul and our body, right? And there definitely is a healing power to that. So to just support getting more of it out there is a very beautiful mission.
I would say, I guess there's a good PR example. I'm going to bring my boy Mercive in one more time. Is my first project I worked with them. I was working out of their house for a little while. Is he had dropped a track called Osmosis, and this was right in the thick of the pandemic. And I walked into the kitchen, and he's like, "So this whole PR thing, like, what are we going to do with this track?" I'm like, "Well, I'm glad you asked." I'm like, "Why did you make this song?" It's like, "Well, I made this about a couple months into the pandemic, and I was really going through it, and I just felt like this sonic experience provided a really cathartic feeling for me." And it's this heavy bass song that's just, it like takes you out of where you're at in the moment, brings you into the present moment in sound, is kind of his tagline. And that was our first campaign. And like the 10 to 15 articles we had come out of it was all healing track, cathartic, this or that. And like, me, the empath music lover, like could maybe pick up on some of those things from a track, but other people, it's just a song. And if it's not a banger and it's a slower song, and you're a banger type artist, people might not connect with it. But having that meaning, I've seen other people post and share that song, like, this was what got me through the pandemic, or like, this is what got me through that. And I'm like, that's what this is about. It's like, there's a time and place to create bangers. You're creating the thing that people look forward to all summer or all week to the weekend, or that peak moment of their night that's the best night of the year. So like, no matter what it is, banger, ballad, anything in between, it's just, giving people something that has meaning. So it has the opportunity to create something in their lives. Like whether it's they're going to go home and work harder on their job, or they're going to kick this habit, or they're going to be better to their girlfriend, or they're going to create music. Like you have the opportunity to inspire people when you give them energy and art and meaning and genuine time. And that's what we do, is slow it down a little bit. Let's create some genuine dialogue and, hopefully some meaning out there that makes a difference in someone's life.
Yeah. And I'm seeing how you also get to play a pretty cool role to help artists potentially tap into that deeper level of their why and their purpose that they might not actually be thinking about, where it's like, all right, I want to build my career and play shows and get music out and, make money and all that. And like, okay, cool. But when you actually slow down and you get tapped back into why you started this shit in the first place and like what really is your purpose, what is your driving force, I think it's such an important question to ask and just deep dive to really dig into, because there are going to be those days where you forget why the fuck you're doing this and life is, catching up with you, and it's hard. It's not an easy journey. The music business, the artist path is like, this is the hero's journey. This is the road less traveled. We are out in the fucking forest by ourselves with our machete and our flashlight, hacking away, paving our own damn path. So to be anchored into your purpose and be able to come back to that, right, in those moments, right? Do you ever get caught up in the madness of the music industry and bullshit and
bi-weekly?
Yeah. You're like, why the fuck am I doing this shit in the first place?
That's a good segue to your point, though, is just like, my job is, it looks a lot of fun. And it is a lot of fun. I'm getting to talk to artists every day and getting to hear their music, before it coming out. But like, I'm working 60 to 70 hours a week in PR. I do manage 3 clients. I also run a magazine. And oh, by the way, I have a personal life, and like, it could be very frying. And then, it's music industry, or like, this isn't something my mom will explain. Or if I ever want that bank job, it's not really building experience there. But like, what I can always fall back on is I love this. Like, I love this. And beyond that, I'm serving people. So like, I'm doing what I love every day. So like, I wake up, like, I have a hard time going to bed at night because I just want to keep working on stuff. But I go to bed and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to pop up and get to start on this next thing, or wake up to some email. It's a new adventure for that day. So like that again goes back to like, that's my gift. And I had fortunately found a way to make it a full-time living. But really what drives me to do this is create further impact for, you know, on one hand, the artists that I'm working with that have inspired me and done so much for me. Like, it's a dream. I'm working with some of the artists that helped me on that journey I told you about myself. And then, of course, getting to watch fans have a better understanding of their favorite artist or my favorite artist, and seeing that dialogue in the community, or being at that circle at the festival group and they're talking about something that you helped place. So like, I am helping, you know, in a sense, be a historian for this community by getting artists to realize what their journey and purpose is, and then helping other people understand what that is as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think those are the two big things. Is you got to love it. You got to love this shit. If you're a publicist, you got to love the work of being a publicist. If you're an artist, if you're a music producer, you got to love making music. That's a big part of it. And the truth is, you're not going to love it every day. And those are the times where we also need to be fulfilled by it. And that's where there's like, okay, there's also this deeper understanding of why I'm doing this, the contribution that I'm making. Like you said, knowing like, hey, I am a bit of a historian. I'm playing a role in this community. I'm contributing to my little island, my little piece of history that I'm making, this little difference that I'm making. And being able to know what that is for you is a place that you can turn to get fulfillment. So hopefully we're getting joy. Hopefully we love it. On the days that we're not, hopefully we can turn to, all right, there is a deeper level of fulfillment here as well. So I love that you bring that up. You mentioned that you have a magazine, which I find very interesting. Tell me about the magazine. I think like this is cool that you have a magazine.
My story's a little longer spiel, so I skipped over that in a sense. So when I started as a writer, you know, I was writing for a lot of local newspapers and magazines out of Florida and Colorado. And my first mentor, Ray Roa, is the editor of Creative Loafing Tampa. He's one of the most amazing writers and editors in the country. He was very patient with me and letting me cover anything I wanted. You know, I was interviewing Odessa, Zedd's Dead, Cloud and Stroke, Rufus the Soul, these massive dance acts when they come through Tampa. And he's like, well, that's not really what we cover. We're like the hipster Tampa scene. We like doing bands, but he let me kind of have a loose leash. Well, after a while, I didn't like necessarily like, these outlets don't really want to talk about this festival scene, which I see as like burgeoning and like there's a lot of exciting dialogue. So I had a breaking point where I was not making any money for newspapers. I was working an office job that closed down, and then I had to start bar backing in the summer in Florida. And I was working at a 10th floor rooftop hotel, and every night I would finish my shift and sit down on the corner of the roof and just be like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you're writing a few articles, sure, but like you're not making like that impact, you know, you can, or you're not like following your passion. So I went home, I was living with my manager, and I said, I'm putting in my 2 weeks for this job and this apartment. I need to go find my purpose in life. And I ended up packing all of my stuff in my 2-door Jeep, threw out everything else that couldn't fit in there. I moved into my buddy's spare office, which was about 110 square feet with a love seat that I slept on for 4 months. And I started with MP3 Mag, which is a print and online national North American festival magazine. So we essentially kind of built our platform on doing artist interviews. And the original essence of this was a college magazine. I was offering kids internship credit in exchange for covering the local scene. In essence, being that person that I always wish I had to give me a chance in music. And as we had more success with artists and festivals wanting to work with us, we kind of evolved it into a national brand. And yeah, it's the same thing as like blogs it's a very hard thing to start right now when kids aren't reading. And like my demographic's 18 to 25, but like, in the 3 years, we sold about 1,000 magazines. It means 1,000 kids in that age group are like, have this on their coffee table or are reading that. And like, even if it's just for one artist story, I'm doing my job. So like, there's a separation with journalistic integrity. If you're a publicist, you shouldn't be writing about your clients. So try to keep that separate. I have a team of about 10 kids that run the magazine for me. We got some very cool stuff coming out this summer. Everybody's going to be very excited about. But yeah, it's more my passion project. I put all my spare money into the magazine and whether it's interns or younger professionals, giving them an opportunity to the magazine with small jobs or part-time jobs. to have some experience in the music industry and figure out if they like it. And at minimum, learn how to write and tell a story.
That's so awesome, man. Really, really, really cool to see that. And I hope to see a return of magazines, like actually getting your fucking hands on something, you know, like I actually can see, you know, we saw the return of vinyl. That was really cool to see. And I know I'm a big skateboarder. It's like I miss like having Thrasher magazines laying around. Like I would still have a subscription to those. I don't know why I don't.
That was actually kind of what we went with this. Is like, why are magazines out of touch? There's a million reasons for that. But essentially with this, we went with kind of resembles a vinyl sleeve being square. And the other idea was really like creating photo-centric spreads without ads that really highlight the artist with exclusive photos, and in a way that I know, because I'm working in dance music, their story hasn't been told to that level. And essentially making it a collector's item. So really pitching these like directly to the artist fan base and like being like, hey, you can have a piece of their story. That was kind of our tagline for a while. And like I've gotten, the whole goal was, I just want this to be a coffee table book that's a conversation starter. If it's sitting there, someone reads a story about these artists, I'm having little wins here and there. And like, whether it's daily bread or fans, like I've had so many people telling me they're either framed or on their coffee table. And like, it actually has value to those people. So yeah, it's like you said, it's like vinyl went and died. I think the same in radio sometimes is like, I just think that if someone could bring it back in a way that's actually unique and like really actually connects with people, there's room for it to have, like for there be a popular magazine. You just have to do it right. And I feel like, at least my understanding from the back end is like a lot of blogs are now trying to charge for their minimal traffic for a crappy article written. A lot of magazines won't cover things unless it's like A-listers that are going to bring them in X traffic. So I'm trying to be the middleman where we don't charge for support at our blog. I try to constantly cover everyone that's making an impact in the North American festival scene. But like, we are a true, organic, supportive of the festival scene. And like, the goal is, again, make these magazines somewhat culturally relevant in the festival scene where people are like, oh, I could go grab one of these at the festival and it has the map. And I could sit down in my air couch and read about the headlining talent playing. So we're rolling it out slowly, but like most passion projects, when you have a full-time job, it's a little bit more of a slow burn with this one. But, I really believe in the work that we're doing and like the quality of the content and the books that we're putting out, that I don't feel like there's a rush. I'm making an impact every day by just getting someone to read.
Yeah, I love that, man. I really just want to speak some life into that idea and what you call your passion project. But I truly think that there's a space for that. Like I don't know. Like I said, I miss having like an actual tangible item that you can hold and you can read.
We'll get you volume 1 through 3. I'll send them out to you.
Yeah, please. And it's so cool for artists to also like, it's nice to get put on a blog. That's rad. But like, hey, look, my face is printed out on a piece of paper in this magazine. It's like, especially this kind of, newer generation, it probably never even bought a fucking magazine in their life. You know what I mean? Like, and so I can see there really being a space for that. Really, really cool thing that you're doing, and definitely, encourage you to keep going with it. I also I really love your story. I really love that you took that chance and you quit your fucking job. There's nothing I love more than a good origin story like that, where you just like have to have that gut check moment where you say, fuck it, whatever I'm doing isn't lighting me up and I'm going to go in a different direction. There's nothing that I just love and admire and respect more than hearing people that have followed that internal calling and chased their dreams and their intuition. Because I think that is like, it's 100% necessary part of this process for anybody wanting to go towards this path of being in the music business or being an artist. So super cool to see what you've created for yourself since then. I'm really pumped about this conversation and really appreciative of you for taking the time to hop on and stoked to connect and get some more of your artists on the show along the way as well. Send them over, man.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you for, all the things that we talked about are vital here, is like how genuine you are, the energy you bring to the table, and also being a leader and entrepreneur in this community, because like having conversations like this, and again, being able to put your story out there, your podcast out there, inspires people. And like, it's been really cool to see like the work that you've been doing and the impact it has. And yeah, I'm just super honored to get to have a conversation with you, and hopefully it connects with some more people.
Thanks, man. Everyone go follow Franz. Go buy a copy of the MP3 Mag. And thanks again for hopping on, brother.
My pleasure, sir. Have a good one.